Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, let's start. Thank you very much, Professor Nagao, for accepting our invitation. Very quickly, because we contact you last day yesterday, in fact, and you kindly accepted our invitation. And maybe as we start to talk about yourself, you can present yourself here today for us. And Professor Lina Yamamoto is here. You mentioned it. And you can say hello or
Thank you, Alexandre.
So sorry, very. I send the message to her now at this moment.
Yeah. So when I saw that Dr. Satoru would be in the presentation today, I was like, oh, I have to just say hi at least. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming. Long time no see indeed. But our Facebook is connected, so easy to contact generally, of course.
Okay, but it's good. And today, Professor Satoru Nagao will talk about Quad. It's an agreement between United States, Japan, Australia, and India. It's a very important issue nowadays, especially when we in this moment we have the war between Ukraine and Russia, and China is involved in some way also. That I think is very important issue for us. And now I want to pass the floor for Professor Satoru Nagao, and you have time for your presentation and after for your lecture.
Should I speak?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me. Yes, just yesterday I received, and I will make presentation in front of you. So it is an honor for me. I belong to the Hudson Institute. Hudson Institute located in Washington, but fellow non-resident I stay in Tokyo. So I will make presentation from Tokyo. But at the same time, I need to advertise. The Hudson Institute is the best think tank in the world because the Chinese government imposed a sanction against Hudson Institute. After the Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen made a speech when he visited New York this month. So that's why beginning of this month, China imposed a sanction against one think tank in the world, Hudson Institute. So that's why Hudson Institute is one of the best think tank in the world because one big government imposed sanction. That is a good advertisement, I think. So thank you, China. Anyway, I make presentation about the counter-China strategy today because I'm focusing on Quad because indeed Japan is a pioneer to introduce this idea of the Quad cooperation or Indo-Pacific. So that's why I will explain it. So view from Brazil are a little different area. This is, but at the same time, when we check U.S.-China competition or current age of the Russia's aggression in Ukraine affects the world situation, indeed, this kind of the security situation directly affect to the situation in Brazil, I think. So that's why the Quad is also important part what happened in the world. I wish my presentation would be valuable for experts, high-level experts who join this webinar. Okay, so from now, I shall talk about the contents, and I will use the PowerPoint. So I will share this one. The title of my presentation is Japan and the Quad, what do we need it? Why do we need it? Sorry, why? So recently, the improved cooperation between India and Japan has become more evident. In the India and Japan, that cooperation is indeed related with the Quad. So Japan and India have been increasing their diplomatic exchanges or joint exercises. When we check this year, January, the Indian fighter jet come to Japan and conducted joint exercises. February, Indian Army 8th Battalion come to Japan and conducted joint exercises. In March, Indian Air Force, the transport plane come to Japan again and conducted joint exercises. And in the same March, the Japanese naval forces, the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force conducted joint exercises with India or other Quad members and France and British and Canada in the Indian Ocean. So every month, joint exercises happen in these members, especially include Japan and India. And joint infrastructure project is also ongoing, especially in the Northeast India, Japan invest. So 4 countries collaborate very deeply recently. Indeed, why? We need to ask Japan why such kind of things has happened. When we remember, check the historical background, this kind of the move especially has happened when the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was the Prime Minister. So the relation between India and Japan was like that. So it is proper to ask, why did PM Abe need this concept? Indo-Pacific and the Quad. Maybe that will be the first topic. One of the good examples of Japan's strategy towards Indo-Pacific and the Quad is in direct link with Japan and India. Japan was a pioneer in creating this concept. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's speech in the Indian Parliament in 2007, long time back, entitled Conference of Two Seas. This address do not directly mention about Indo-Pacific and the Quad, but when we check the contents, idea of the Indo-Pacific and the Quad both are included in one address. So that was starting point. So why he needs this concept? So first one, from his speech, we can see 3 reasons. Firstly, he needs a way to think both Pacific and Indian Ocean as a one concept. Indo-Pacific replaced the concept of the Asia-Pacific, which did not include the Indian Ocean region. But because of the rapid economic development, both Pacific and the Indian Ocean region are increasing emerge as an influential region in the world politics. For example, the International Institute for Strategic Studies, IISS in the United Kingdom, every year they publish a database of the military balance. In this case, we can identify the one feature. The nominal Asian defense spending, excluding Australia and New Zealand, overtook the NATO Europe total defense expenditure of the NATO Europe in 2012. So after that, since then, Asia's defense spending is bigger than the NATO Europe defense spending. So that's why in the past, when we talk about where is the center of the world, Europe is the center of the world, America is the center of the world. That's why the big war has happened in Europe. We can call this is World War. But now if something has happened in the Pacific and Indian Ocean, the impact will spread to the world too. That's why this is also one of the center of the world politics. That's why Indo-Pacific concept is needed. That is the first reason. But this is not only reason, of course. Secondly, Abe want to introduce both Indo-Pacific and Quad concept at the same time because he believed that rising Indo-Pacific should not be the China-dominated region. He explained this idea in his article, Asia's Democratic Security Diamond, which was published just before he sworn in as a prime minister for second term in 2012. The Indo-Pacific is a geographic concept that includes all of the countries surrounding China, and the Quad includes all the great powers in the Indo-Pacific except China. Okay, just I enter the third reason. Third reason, Abe want to emphasize importance of India. Because its integration into the Quad. Why the Indians? Why we can say so? Because indeed, Quad is meaningless if we talk about U.S., Japan, Australia cooperation. Japan is a former ally of the United States. Australia is a former ally of the United States. If three countries want to cooperate, there are plenty of chances. No need a new concept. New concept is needed because he tried to include India. India is a newcomer. So that's why he introduced this idea because he wants to cooperate with India. So Indo-Pacific and Quad originally came from Japan. That is one of the typical example. Japan built India as an important partner. But however, deep Japan-India relations have not always naturally occurred because of the geographical and geopolitical distance. This is one of the example, typical example. According to the data of the two governments, 40,000 non-resident Indians live in Japan. But that time, look at this number. In other countries, more Indians live in the US, yes, Australia, even China. In case of Japanese live in the foreign country, when we can check. In India, yes, in 2005, this was only 2,000. Wow, very small. Now 5 times bigger. Wow, 10,000. 10,000 is very small in the 1.4 billion country. So in the United States, more Japanese. In Australia, even with China. This was number in 2018, so a little old because number is declining in China. But anyway, I will mention later. So that's why, indeed, human people connection is very thin between Japan and India. Despite this, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe tried to include India and try to form the Indo-Pacific and Quad. So we want to ask next question. That's why we want to ask, why is the relation of the Japan and India have progress recently? This is not the natural. So to answer this, 3 more questions we need to ask. How have the Japan-India relation developed? Well, why have the two countries done this? And how does the Quad work? So these are the logical questions built from situation. So how have the Japan-India relation developed? Security cooperation has improved well. Indeed, the economy trade, when we check, 1% or 2% of the share of the total trade as occupied by Japan-India trade. For India, for Japan, that's the same. So for India, As a trading partner, Japan is not important. For Japan, India is not important as a trading partner. So economically, relation is thin. People-to-people exchanges, you have already seen, relation is thin. But the security, very deep now. So Japan and India hold a high-level bilateral, trilateral, quadrilateral cooperation. Signs GSOMIA, which is agreement to share military-related information, or AXA to share military supplies. So conducted joint exercises. I have already mentioned Army, Navy, Air Force. And start joint development of the unmanned ground vehicle also. So this is weapon development project. Security area, this relation has progressed very much. Despite there being some big projects, economic relations have not deepened enough, I mentioned, but only exceptional case is ODA. Yes, India is for Japan's ODA, India receives the most biggest share of the total budget Japan prepared as ODA. So, my biggest receiver of the ODA. But except this, economic relation, especially civil relation, is very thin. So, for Japan, India's 12th ranked trading partner, which is 2.2%. The fund of India, 1.2%. So we need to focusing on the security relations. So if we point it at 3 features of Japan-India relation, first, until now, Japan-India security relation has developed faster than the economic relations. Second, Japan-India bilateral relations have developed alongside multilateral relations, including US relation with the US and relation with Australia. And thirdly, Japan-India relation has grown closer since end of 2000, when China's activities began to grow and were perceived as a threat to both countries. So therefore, China is certainly a decisive factor in the increasing Japan-India relations. So why have the two countries done this? I enter. You can see this one. For Japan, the main concerning point are China's activity in the sea around Japan. Beijing has been expanding its military activity near Japan. For example, China has been carrying out naval exercises on the Pacific side of Japan since 2008. And now also around Taiwan, that is a concern too. Recently, China and Russia collaboratively patrolling around Japan. Yes, now for Russian participants, this is not friendly information, but it is fact. So our perception, yes, China and Russia is collaborated around Japan. And these activities has expanded the defense line of China from the first island chain to the second island chain. So you can imagine if China try to protect the core area, this is a city of the coastal area, and American forces coming from the United States by aircraft carrier or other. In this case, China try to defend through the second island chain first and the first island chain next, and they try to prevent the US forces to approach to the coastal area, cities of the coastal area. But that kind of image is relatively proper. And especially around the Taiwan Strait, the activity has increased. And if Japan will not cooperate to defending Taiwan, we can expect Taiwan will fall under the China's dominance. That's why Japan cannot escape from this responsibility to supporting Taiwan, even if Taiwan is not Japan. So, and but when we check China's activity and compare with China's activity in other areas, we can find similarity in other areas. So important similarities. Indeed, China is provoking not only against Japan, but also other countries. So one by one. First one. First similarity or not is China's repeated disregarding for the international law when laying claim to new territory. For example, in the East China Sea, China did not claim the Senkaku Island before 1970s. China's attitude has since changed due to the potential existence of the oil reserve in the East China Sea, or the Senkaku Island of Japan in the strategic location to pressure Taiwan and have potential the oil reserve. And China's expressing the same attitude in the South China Sea or India-China border indeed. In case of the Indo-China border, the exiled Tibetan government pointed out this area China claiming it belongs to India. And in the South China Sea, you know, the international court denied China's claim. Despite this, China continued to build the artificial island and claimed nearly 90% of the South China Sea as their own sea. So they do not respect the international system or international law. And the second recurring facet is China's behavior is its exploitation of the military power vacuum. So you can see this data. This presentation slide is indeed made by the Japan's Ministry of Defense, and they publish on the web. Everywhere they upload it in the different places. That's why every year I need to search. But anyway, every year they publish this. For example, in South China Sea, China occupied half of the Paracel Island just after France withdrew from Indochina Peninsula in 1950s. So 1970s, what happened? China expanded its presence all over the Paracel Island. So half and half they occupied one by one. And after, US withdrew from Vietnam. And in 1980s, what happened? When Soviet troops reduced the number in Vietnam, China occupied the sixth feature of the exploratory island. And in 1990s, when the US troops withdrew from Philippines, China took the mischief reef. So every time military balance has changed and find the power vacuum, they occupied it. China is safe. So, like South China Sea, indeed the East China Sea or the Indo-China land border, the military balance has changed recently because China finds the power vacuum because of the China increased their military expenditure very rapid pace. For example, according to the SIPRI, which is a think tank in Sweden, they publish database and update database every year. From 2012 to 2021, so 1 decade, China increased their military expenditure 72%. During the same period, US decreased 6.1%. So still, the US military expenditure is 2.7 times bigger than China's. But yes, China is catching. And in the regionally, China's military, China got advantage in militarily because the United States need to deal with worldwide area, but China can concentrate their military power in one area. So that's why, along with this military expenditure, China can find the power vacuum, then they try to steal the territory. For example, this data is number of Chinese vessels identified within the contiguous zone in the water surrounding the Senkaku Island in Japan. In 2011, just 12 in 1 year, but 2012 increased 428, and steadily in a very big number. And in 2019, more than 1,000. 1 year is 365 days. This means that 1,000 means 3 times per day. In the India-China border, yes, increased. In the 2011 and 2019, reached this. So from 200, now 2019, 663. So I try to compare the two data. Yes, there are similarities. In 2011, that's small number. 2012 increased very fast pace, and steadily, and 2019 increase again. In both areas, against East China Sea, against Japan, and against India. Same. So that's why you can say China's territory expansion has one pattern. When they find the power vacuum, they try to steal it. Okay, we'll enter the third one. So finally, China's arguably lawless expansionism is usually paired with effort to exclude country that outside the region. And wait. And that, so for example, this is a bilateral problem. So other country, other third country should not intervene. That is the logic they are using, even if they are challenging against the international system itself. So in the East China Sea, China blames the assertive behavior of the intervention of the outsiders, which means the United States. And similarly, in the Indo-China border, no third country tried to intervene. In the Taiwan Strait, same, or South China Sea, the same. For example, between the China and the Philippines, no other country should not intervene. Is the logic China is using. That is another pattern. So, what should they do? What should they do is maybe answer is simple. Okay, China's lack of the respect to the international law expands the territory claim where they are power vacuum, or efforts to exclude outside action from the regional intervention are all common theme of the China's exploit in the East China Sea, South China Sea, or in the China border, every time same. In this case, how to do that? Knowing the pattern of China's behavior point towards the answer. We should do the opposite of what China wants. Firstly, countries around China must continue to respect the rule-based order, grounded in current international law. And China's neighbors need to fill the military power vacuum by increasing our defense budget or cooperate each other. And thirdly, countries around China need to continue enhance security cooperation with the US, Australia, or other like-minded countries. So third country should intervene. That is a way. So we need to remember the original topic. In this case, Quad, how effective? Firstly, Quad must continue to respect to insist upon the rule-based order grounded in the current international law. And second, Quad country need to fuse perceived power vacuum by maintaining military balance. And thirdly, Quad countries need to integrate economic effort or reduce reliance on China and cooperate each other and show as a rule-based order. Shows how important rule-based order as a third country. But okay. A little detail I should. Indeed, Quad is a country of the groups of based on the democracies. And democracy of the is one of the symbolic political regime of the rule-based order. So based on current international law. So this Quad is relatively strong, powerful, to show how important rule-based order. So in this case, Quad is an effective way, Quad cooperation effective way to respect the rule-based order. And militarily, indeed, we can point it out. These three things are effective to maintain military balance. For example, if Japan and India or US and Australia cooperate each other, there are at least three methods to maintain military balance. And firstly, for example, the view from China. China has a huge military expenditure, budget, and military resources or military assets. But if Japan and India is enemy of China at the same time, China need to divide their budget or other resources on the two sides. If the South China Sea is a matter, if the other area is a matter, in this case, they need to diverse their military expenditure multi-direction. So that's why if the Quad country cooperate each other, it is more easier for this country to maintain military balance and do not create power vacuum. China can steal it. And in the Indian Ocean, a little similar situation. China is expanding their influence in the Indian Ocean. And if the China deploys a naval ship, and in this case, to deal with this Chinese expansion, if the Japan or United States shares some naval ship to the Indian Ocean, they cannot use. Japan and the US cannot deploy these ships to the Pacific side to deter China. So under such conditions, if these three, Japan, India, Australia cooperate with India, especially Australia or India's Navy, take some responsibility in the Indian Ocean, and Japan, the United States do not need to share the naval ships from the Pacific side. So that is the effective way. That's why in the Indian Ocean, especially the India should take more responsibility, and it will save Japan, US, Australia to maintain military balance against China. And thirdly, to support Southeast Asia. Southeast Asian countries do not have enough military power to deter China's expansion. But so that's why we need to support them. But in this case, indeed, long history, India supports Southeast Asia. For example, the Vietnam by the Russian fighter jet training is India take responsibility, the training of these crews. Submarine, in this case, same. Or Thailand, crew of the fighter jet of the aircraft carrier, or Philippines by the BrahMos missile from India, or Indonesia, the maintenance of the fighter jet taken by India. So, and Malaysia, indeed, 2/3 of the Malaysian fighter jet pilots trained by India. So generally, in Southeast Asia, Japan's influence of the infrastructure project of the etc. is relatively big. And the US support is also the influential. Australia support is part of it. But now we're focusing on the cooperation with India and the Quad cooperate to support the Southeast Asia will be the very important part to maintain military balance against China. So, and especially now, these countries focusing on strike capability. For example, Japan will buy the 400 Tomahawk, or these are the list. Japan will prepare, except Tomahawk. Tomahawk is not included in the list, but Japan will possess the counter strike capability. Strike capability is important. But not only Japan, Australia, this is list of Australia. Australia also possess strike capability, long range strike capability. They decide recently. And India also tests many strike capability. So all of these Quad countries test strike capability at the same time, because if all of these countries possess strike capability, China cannot ignore one front when they focusing on other front. For example, if China try to invade Taiwan, still they need to worry about the India-China border, if India has enough strike capability, and vice versa. So, and thirdly, indeed, economic front or more strategic front is also important. China developed their technology. When many Chinese study in the United States and get the technology, learn as a student, learn the technology as a student, or so, and to develop technologies, this technology use many rare earths, but 90% of the rare earth supply chain belong to China. And most importantly, indeed, as a market, these countries around China, including Japan, Australia, India, even the United States, rely on the Chinese market. So that's why this kind of situation need to change to intervene. So United States need to reduce their dependence on China, Japan also, Australia also. And in this case, they find Indian market. But at the same time, if the US will escalate the competition with China more, in this case, US need to reduce the dependence on China. And in case of Japan, that has already started. This is one of the indicator. How many Japanese live in China, and how many Japanese live in the United States. Indeed, when we check the number in 2012, and when we check number in 2020, yes, it is obvious Japanese live in China is declining. But same number when we check in the United States, this is the right one. Yes, 2012 and 2020, increase. More Japanese live in the United States, but lesser Japanese live in China. So Japanese are escaping from China, even if China is important as a market. So that's currently Quad is doing. So we should enter the conclusion. The Indo-Pacific has become an increasing ascendant region, and the Quad concept, including Japan, India, and the US and Australia, has sought to restrain China's dominance there. So the more China escalates the situation, the more the defense capability of the Quad, including all of the US, Japan, India, and Australia, will be institutionalized in the Indo-Pacific. That's what happened in the Indo-Pacific region. So thank you very much. That's my presentation. Maybe I haven't checked the time, so there's a possibility a little long. But
No,
40
no.
minutes, yeah, you said, and 15 minutes I spent. That 35 minutes, 45 minutes. So 5 minutes exceeded, but okay, nearly finished. Okay, finished.
It was perfect, Professor Nagao. Thank you very much for your presentation. Your very, very important reflections about the Quad in Asia, especially here in Brazil. We have no many specialists to speak about this issue. That was very important contribution today for us. Okay, I will open for question and answers. The first one, I think, was Valdir.
Hello, Professor. Am I allowed to make egoistically 3 questions?
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, first question is about after the beginning of the war in Ukraine, how has Japanese perceptions about Russia changed? This is the first one. The second one regards the possibility of a Chinese military incursion into Taiwan, because many have been talking about this lately, mentioning about the possibility of this happening in 2025 or even 2027. What would be, in your opinion, the immediate reaction of Japan if China decides to act in such a way, taking into account that the Japanese army is restricted to self-defense? This is the second question. The third question is that during your presentation, I saw that the number of Chinese incursions into the South China Sea and also in Indian borders have increased exponentially between mainly 2011 and 2012. What would you say could be the main reasons of this jump in numbers between those years? What happened exactly between 2011 and 2012 for we to have such an increase in Chinese incursions? Thank you so much for your presentation. It was very interesting.
Thank you very much. Should I reply one by one, or in this case, it depends on the moderator? So
yeah, you can use your time. Be free.
Okay.
You can answer one by one or the way we want.
I reply because all of these 3 are very good questions, and I should limit the time of answer because every time my speaking is a little too long. So, firstly, yes, that is very important. Yes, since Russia aggression to Ukraine has started, India's attitude is it looks like they are neutral, not criticize Russia. So view from Japan stand with Ukraine. There is a gap of the opinion between Japan and India, and some of the Japanese start to say India, we cannot rely on India. That's true, but at the same time, firstly, when we check the background why India choose this attitude, people start to understand. In Japan, people start to understand why India choose that kind of attitude. Last 70 years, Russia hasn't changed the stance and consistently support India. For example, in war in the 1971, simply said, traditional ally of Russia is India. So that's why the neutral is maybe a limitation. And more than 50% of their weapon rely on Russia. So weapon is a very sophisticated machine, but weapon is using in the very rough condition. That's why easy to block, and they need the repair parts, and especially the frontline weapons need ammunition. So repair parts and ammunition supply. Because of this, India's military operation rely on Russia. For example, if India try to attack Pakistan or try to attack China, in this case, before they start a big military operation, they need to ask Russia to send the repair parts and ammunition. So their foreign policy is not really independent. Their foreign policies rely on Russia. So under such kind of situations, if the international community asks India to criticize Russia and decouple with Russia, what India can do is very limited. So that's why the neutral is relatively better than the supporting Russia. So people start to understand this kind of India's background. But India itself has changed. In February 2022, just after the Russia's aggression to Ukraine has started, India's attitude looks like supporting Russia. But some months later, India starts to realize Russia will not win. And in summer, the Modi tells Putin, this is not age of war. So when I visit India in the April 2022, the Indian expert supporting Russia, but next year when I visited, the March and April I visited India, same expert said, we are tired to support Russia. So why we need to, why this is not our war, why we suffer such kind of thing? International image has done. So India's attitude has changed last 1 year. So that's why now Japan focusing on India very actively. This is a chance to persuade India to leave Russia. Of course, there is a possibility that India will conclude free trade agreement with Russia in this soon, I think, because India increased import from Russia, for example, the oil, for example, some natural resources. But at the same time, Russia did not buy any Indian products. So that's why the trade looks like this. So that's why India asked Russia, Russia must buy. But in this case, Russia asked India, let's use the ruble instead of US dollar. But India say, India do not need the ruble. Ruble is nothing. Rupee is needed. Indian rupee is better. But when Russia checks the rate of the rupee and the ruble, this is quite Indian favor. So that's why Russia say, this is unfair. So that's kind of the conflict of the trade between India and Russia has happened just now. So that's why even if India concludes Russia's free trade agreement, Russia will not get much money, we think. So now the G7 imposed sanctions against Russia, and the price cap, $60 is the limit, except the more cheaper one is okay. Cheaper ones, maybe the country can buy the oil from Russia, but the exceeded one, they cannot buy. In this case, India say, it's okay, because of cheap, we buy the Russian oil. If this is expensive, we will not buy, India said. So in this case, even if India buy oil from Russia, Russia cannot get big money. So that's why, view from Japan, current India's attitude is not a problem. Every year, India is leaving from Russia. That's okay. And when we check the weapon, I said weapon, indeed the share of Russia is declining last 10 years. So if this tendency will continue or accelerate it, there's no problem too. And Russia tried to sell the China and Pakistan the weapon. This means that India cannot trust Russia. So it's okay too. And indeed, really increased from Russia to China, increased. Russia to Pakistan is increased, even if they're very small. For example, the fighter jet Pakistan use engine, Russian engine. So that's why in the long tendency, we can rely on India. Just now, we cannot rely on, but it's okay. Long term, we can rely on. And especially against China, we can, India card is very strong. But that is current attitude. Okay, okay, I should not explain so long. Only first question I reply. Okay, second one, Taiwan. Taiwan crisis happen. What kind of reaction? If the Japan will not allow the United States to support Taiwan, what will happen? Japan to Taiwan, there are many southwestern islands, and this is a supply line for Taiwan to defend themselves. So if Japan will not allow the United States to use this supply line for Taiwan, Taiwan will fall. But That is the reason, as a ally of the United States, Japan cannot do that. Japan must allow the United States to support Taiwan. It is nearly promised. And as a joint exercises, Japan conducted many simulation with the US and other US allies in this area. So this means that Japan is preparing. So it is obvious if China start to attack Taiwan, automatically Japan must support Taiwan because the situation demands it. Japan cannot escape this responsibility. That's why what kind of reaction Japan will do? The former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe simply said, Taiwan's emergency is Japan's emergency. That is the situation. So if China need to attack Taiwan, China need to calculate the war against Japan too. That is the current situation. So in 2025, 2027, yes, China can get advantage regionally, but at the same time, they should not underestimate the potential intervention from Japan. And third question, why did China increase their aggressiveness in 2012 and 2019? Simply, I don't know. But if the same situations happen against Japan and against India at the same time, the reason is China. Not if Japan do something and this was the reason, China do not need to increase their incursion against India. If India's maybe what India has done was a problem, we cannot explain why China increased the incursion against Japan. China has the reason to increase this. That is, we can prove it. But what kind of reason China has? Indeed, I haven't identified the real reason. That is the answer to the third question. Okay, sorry, I spent a very long time to answer these three questions, but I accept other questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I think if you observe well, is Professor Floriano.
Dr. Satoru Nagao, thank you so much for your presentation. Domo arigatou gozaimashita. You pointed out during your talk the gap between security and economic connections regarding India. And I believe it was in 2021 when the Quad adopted the supply chain resilience initiative to share best practices and try to diversify supply lines. Do you see any concrete progress regarding this initiative that could maybe narrow this gap on the economic side? And also the second question, you mentioned many times India, Russia, China. Of course, your focus is the Indo-Pacific region. You didn't mention Brazil, understandably, but Brazil is part of the BRICS together with those three other countries. And even though the current Brazilian government says it's being neutral regarding this China-US tension, we can notice that there is a much closer proximity between Brazil and other countries in South America and Latin America to China today than it was before, even when you compare the proximity between those countries and the United States, which was the tradition previously. Are you concerned with that? Like some people in the US, since you are at Hudson Institute, some people in the US are very concerned about this proximity. Are you also concerned with that?
Okay. Yeah, these are the very important questions. First version, can the Quad Summit narrow the gap between security and economy or people-people exchanges? Of course, Quad Summit will be the one of the reasons to close the gap. And of course, there are another chances. Another project is also improving this closing gap. So as a result, it will close the gap, I think. But not just now. That is maybe my answer. Because when we check the number of the Japanese company opened office in India, it started increasing. So economically, the government try to persuade the companies to join, or the company has a motivation to relocate factory from China to India, or invest or open the new factory in India. Such kind of move itself is exist. But at the same time, the effort is not enough compared with their investment toward China. That is also true. Because Japan and China trade has long tradition, spend a long time. For example, generally, if they invest 7 years, they start to get enough income. Maybe 7 years after the investment, they start to get the income. Because the investment is huge during the 7 years. That time the investment is more compared with the income. But 7 years later, they start to get more income than the investment. That is the pattern of the business. So in case of China, long term, they spend long term. That's why now is the time to get the incomes. Benefit they can get. Under such kind of situation, this company want to get the benefit more. That is natural. But the government asks them to leave from China. So this company want to say, why? They will not want to leave from China because this is beneficial. So gradually, the government succeeded to persuade this company and they start to leave. That's why number is declining. Japanese live in China is declining. But this move is very part of the long process. So just 1 year, 2 years, Japan cannot decouple with China. But in the long run, they will change it. And the Quad Summit try to diverse supply chain, or try to open the new mines of the rare earths, or try to limit China's access to the critical technologies. So Quad agreed, and this agreement focusing on these areas. So that is just beginning, but they identify what is the most important problem, priorities, and one by one, they start to do it. So in the long run, it will affect very big, I think. Okay, about the second question. Yes, the Brazil-China relation is a concern for Japan, that's true. But at the same time, it is not easy to persuade countries who do not face China's threat directly, we believe. Because many countries in the world trade with China, even if Japan biggest trading partner is China. So that's why we do not have enough reason to persuade other countries. But view from my analysis, trade with China is very risky. I confident to say. Indeed, because when we check the U.S. history, U.S. hasn't allowed any rival to survive last 250 years. So once so these rivals, including Japan in the past, or Germany or Soviet Union. So that's why we confident to believe once the United States start to say China is the most serious strategic competitor, we should not underestimate the value of the United States. In the future, one shall stand and one shall fall. So that's why if we rely on China's market too much, our economy will be passenger of the sinking ship. So even if it's in the long-term process, not a short-term, long-term process, we need to leave from China. We should not rely on China. That is important to survive. That is my opinion. So if the Brazil planned strategic long-term economic policy, in this case, Brazil should not rely on China too much. It's maybe my suggestion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Nagao. Now is Enoch, please.
Thank you very much. Nagao sensei, Wokoi itadaki arigatou gozaimasu.
ありがとうございます。
I have two questions, if I may. And the first question is, I would like to know your thoughts about the Quad Plus. And there has been, and the theme of the Quad Plus has been evolving the latest years, because during the pandemic, the Quad countries started to conduct meetings with other democracies, such as New Zealand, Brazil, and Israel. And some analysts have considered that these countries might be invited to join the Quad in the future. And I would like to know if you think that is desirable for the Quad to include new members other than the 4 regional democracies. And my second question is regarding the fact that China has has been increasingly engaged in hostage diplomacy, especially by arresting nationals, foreign nationals, especially those from the Quad countries, such as the recent cases of the arrest of Professor Nobuo Iwatani from Hokkaido University, China, and also the Australian journalist Chen Lei, who is currently being held in Beijing. And I like to know if the Quad has any sort of strategy to face the increasing Chinese pressure to hostage diplomacy. And these are my two questions, and thank you very much for your time.
Yes, that is also a very good questions. If Quad includes more members, Quad cannot decide anything, I think. So Quad Plus is very effective, but case by case basis, I think. Because when people are choose 4 countries as a Quad, indeed these 4 countries are regional countries, great powers in this region, and so this and all of these are democracies. Indeed, when we check the conditions, it is a very sophisticated choice. But when we include, for example, if we add Vietnam is not democracy, or if we include British and France, it looks like this is a European American circle, and India want to leave from this circle because they are the colony of these countries. So indeed, balance will be collapsed. That's why Quad Plus is very useful to talk some special issues. So case by cases, we can include other country as a plus, but we should not include other country as a permanent member. That is maybe what Quad can do currently, I believe. So typical example is South Korea. South Korea want to enter the Quad and they ask, but in the past, the Americans said, Quad is against China and can't South Korea choose this course? So we cannot include South Korea, they said. Now the new government is South Korea try to choose a strong stance toward China. But still, in the long run, Japan doubts South Korea's attitude and the US doubts South Korea's attitude because if South Korea joins the Quad, there's a possibility that Japan and South Korea compete inside of the Quad. Because for the South Korean government, anti-Japan is a very good policy to rise their popularity. So temporarily, they can leave from anti-Japan. In the long run, they restart to claim the anti-Japan and rise the popularity of the government. So domestically, it's okay, but internationally, it will affect the cooperation. So that's why Quad is Quad and plus is plus. This is maybe currently we can do it. We maybe I believe, and other experts also believe. I believe. And hostage diplomacy. This is serious now. But China should realize if they take the hostage, company want to leave from China. So view from Japanese government, yes, hostage is serious, but at the same time, when the government persuade the companies, that's why we said, look at China, you be the hostage. You should leave from China as soon as possible, government can say. So this is dual edge for China. So China, if I'm the advisor of the Chinese government, I can recommend the Chinese government, do not take the hostage. Your image will decline. You accelerate the declining image. That is my opinion. So this is a suicide mission for China, we believe. Because we can ignore one of the two hostages because China is wrong and government try to rescue, but impossible. And so government can escape from this issue by using China was wrong. In this case, what kind of damage the Japanese government will face? Indeed, nothing. So China takes a hostage, and what kind of benefit China can get? Indeed, I don't know. Maybe other countries will get the benefit, I believe. That's my opinion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Professor Nagao. We have 3 more people with questions. Next one is João, please. You have to open your microphone.
Sorry, I lower the hand is forgot to open the microphone. Thank you, Professor Satoru. Thank you for the presentation. I will make a short questions to not use too much time. Regarding the relation with India, how is conceptual? How to make a long-term relationship with in security area with India inside of the contest at the Quad, when India is member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It's to me, that's my opinion, of course. At my point of view, that India is acting like the Brazil during the Cold War. They using the relationship between the two sides of the disputes to preserve its own sovereignty and so its own independence agenda. So see the inclusion of a Quad, the inclusion of India in the Quad is to make assure the neutral position of India in the dispute between China and what I asking is if this kind of feel is wrong for my perspective, or is or we see a possibility of the India taking sides of these situations in this whole contest. No, thank you for your attention. This is the only question that I have.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to save the question. This is very important and important question. India is very difficult to persuade. That's true. India belong SCO, India belong SCO, the Shanghai Corporate Organization. India belong, of course, BRICS. India belong, many India belong. So in India say non-alignment or all alignment. This means that they do not choose a side. But at the same time, when we check the India's history, during the Cold War, even if India say this is non-alignment, they are ally of the Russia, Soviet Union. So in our definition, so that's why India can ally, even if they do not say this is alliance. So that is indeed what really happened during the Cold War. And but at the same time, India cannot ally of the or choose the side so easily because India is facing many problems at the same time. Yes, China is problem, but Pakistan is also problem. China supported Pakistan, that is true. But at the same time, Pakistan is a strong connection with Islamic extremism. To deal with Islamic extremism, they need cooperation with Russia because Islamic extremism information Russia has in the Central Asia. So that's why India need to deal with China and Islamic terrorism at the same time. In this case, to deal with China, yes, Quad is welcome. But to deal with terrorism, yes, not only Quad, but also Russia is needed. And to deal with China, in some cases, if the Russia-China relation is not good, India rely on Russia too. And so every time India needs all of these countries, even if China is constantly threat for India. So that's why India cannot choose a side. Case by cases, India need to choose a side. This is understandable. And in case of China, still India say, this is not military alliance. Quad should not be the military alliance, they said. So this is also difficult for the other three countries. Why India say so? But when we check the land border, yes, we can understand. Because if China understand Quad is a military alliance, we need to fight. Which country will be the target? First target will be India. Because other three countries, they are former ally and strong bond. And at the same time, there is no land border. They need to overcome the sea. After that, they can attack it. But in case of India, there is a land border. And India is a newcomer, so weakest link in the Quad. So one by one, they want to cut. In this case, India will be the target. So that's why, indeed, India faces a dilemma in this case. India should not advertise this as a military alliance. At the same time, to strengthen the defense in the India-China border, they need to cooperate with the other Quad members. So that's why India's way is very complicated. In the Quad side, India cooperates with maritime security, not land border security. But bilateral basis, India, US, India, Australia, India, Japan, strengthen their cooperation militarily. For example, last year and this year, typical joint exercises between US and India has happened in the last summer, 200 kilometers from the India-China border. Last December, November to December in this case, 100 kilometers the India-China border. And this month, the United States sends strategic bomber B-1 to the air base in India, from not near but Karaikunda air base located. This air base is used for the bomber to attack the Japanese army in China during the World War II. that places, US send B-1B, the big bomber, which can carry the long-range Tomahawk missile. This means that, like the World War II, United States can attack China, any place in China, by using this bomber from India. But India allowed to accept this bomber to come to India and conduct joint exercises from that base. This is a message. So India intendedly sending the message, India cooperate with the United States, bilateral base, and it will be threat for China. So India's manner is, even if India say Quad is not a military alliance, a bilateral basis, Quad is a military alliance. That is a message India tried to send to China. So every time when we try to persuade India, we need to check the detail and identify real message of India. Very complicated, difficult partner. But at the same time, when we check the detail of this activity, we understand what India want to do. That's why we trust India. That is the answer to your question.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer with many details. Very interesting answer. Thales, please.
Hello, thank you so much, Professor Satoru, for your lecture. It was very insightful indeed. I would like to ask you a question regarding the Quad and Southeast Asia, ASEAN particularly. Well, it is crystal clear that the Quad is an anti-China alliance, and every country in the Indo-Pacific is well aware of this. Of course, there are Southeast Asian countries that are openly concerned about China's incursions in the South China Sea, as you mentioned, and they all welcome the Quad security footprint in the region, the public goods the Quad provides. They welcome freedom of navigation, respect for international law, and so on. But we can also wonder, why is there barely any support for the Quad among ASEAN members? I mean, last semester I was a visiting student in Thailand, and I had the opportunity to talk to many scholars, journalists, diplomats, military staff, not only in Thailand, but also in Malaysia, in Cambodia, in Vietnam. And from what I've heard from them, they have three major concerns on the Quad. First is that the Quad could undermine ASEAN centrality in the regional security architecture. They see a big difference in their form of cooperation. I mean, ASEAN pursues inclusivity, while the Quad is more premised on an exclusive cooperation. Second, they do not want to be seen as part of an alliance to contain China. They are close to China geographically. China is ASEAN's top trade partner. They have many bilateral, multilateral cooperation mechanisms with China. RCEP is very illustrative of this, right? And so no country in Southeast Asia wants to be seen as part of an anti-China coalition for obvious reasons. And third, many countries, especially Indonesia and Malaysia, they have been very critical of AUKUS, that we can say is part of the same Indo-Pacific strategy of the US, and therefore it goes hand in hand with the Quad. And that is because they fear that the nuclear submarines provided to Australia could not only raise tensions in the region, but they could also violate the Southeast Asia nuclear free zone treaty. So my question is the Quad taking ASEAN countries' concerns into consideration and their desires not to make a binary choice between US and China, and their desire not to be part of an anti-China alliance? What is your take? What is your opinion on this? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This is very interesting point. Yes, okay, we need to remember about the fact what happened in the US Soviet Cold War in Europe. And that's why we can say what kind of location, ASEAN centrality. I'm honest and hawkish, that's why I can say. Indeed, Central Europe in the US Soviet Cold War, it looks like the ASEAN current US-China competition. Because Central Europe, there are many problems has happened during the US Soviet Cold War. For example, the Berlin, what example the Prague Spring, or what example the what happened in the Hungary. All of these issues has happened during the Cold War between in the Central Europe between the US and Soviet, because this area has some conditions. This is the area of the arena of the power game. Arena of the power game, because this area, all of the countries are located between these US and Soviet or other great powers, British, France, and at the same time, this region itself is separated into many small countries, and so they cannot decide the situation themselves. So they are under influence of the great powers because of their size. So that's why Central Europe cannot decide their fate. US or Soviet Union can decide their fate. And this is just the arena of the power game, unfortunately. So ASEAN face a similar situation now. They are surrounding the great power, the Quad countries, the Japan, US, Australia, and India, and China. China is expanding the influence towards Southeast Asia. And Southeast Asia is consists by the 10 countries and separated. So each country cannot show enough influence to decide the fate of the ASEAN. That looks like the Central Europe is during the Cold War. So that's why ASEAN concerned about US-China competition or Quad-China competition in this region is understandable. They want to decide their fate themselves, but they can do that. If ASEAN is integrated their efforts and as a one great power, of course they can decide. That's why the ASEAN is formed. But at the same time, ASEAN is not so connected strongly. So under such kind of situations, yes, simply said, ASEAN centrality means that ASEAN could be the arena. Just center of the Indo-Pacific. That concern is true. And they do not want to contain China because they rely on, their economy rely on trade with China or investment from China. That's also true. And Indonesia, Malaysia, especially Indonesia, relatively big country in the ASEAN, try to be neutral from this conflict to leave from the such kind of the situation, which could be the arena of the power game. That is also understandable. But if US-China competition will escalate, ASEAN countries need to decide their attitude. In this case, my recommendation is what happened in the Indian-China border. Nepal and Bhutan choice is completely opposite, but which country gets a benefit? Nepal is located between India and China. Bhutan also. So Nepal's concern is they will lose their independence. There's a possibility Indian side is open, the China side is mountain. So to seek their independence or to seek their influence as a sovereignty country, they want to connect with China and try to make the balance between India and China, it's a good choice, Nepal believed. But what happened after that? India imposed sanctions against Nepal because Indian side is only open side. So this impact was too strong towards Nepalese government. So every time India impose economic sanction, Nepal need to change the government, and new government need to go India and say, and apologize, and all of the limitation related to India is written one. So they cannot escape from the Indians' influence. Bhutan choice is completely opposite. They decide to rely on India perfectly. They accept the Indian army to stay inside, but so they are good boy under the India's influence. But despite this, Bhutan can ask India to support their sovereignty in the United Nations. Bhutan asked India to support their claim to be the independent country in the United Nations. Because of the good boy, the Indian government do not have the reason to criticize Bhutan. So finally, India supports Bhutan's claim, and Bhutan got right to join the United Nations as an independent country. And when India asked Bhutan, Bhutan should build a dam and create electricity because India invested. So Bhutan accepted. And instead of this, if Bhutan sells this electricity to India, they can get income. That's the deal. Because of the Bhutan is good boy, India's suggestion was not bad one, and Bhutan got it. So Bhutan got a benefit under Pax Indiana. And but only worry is, if Bhutan walk this course, there's a possibility in the future India annexed Bhutan. That is concern. The Bhutan side is Sikkim. It has really happened that time. Suddenly in the Sikkim, the democratic movement happened, and the king of the Sikkim asked India to stop to support this democratic movement. But India asked the king, referendum is good, democracy is good, you should do that. And after the referendum, this referendum result is king should resign, and Sikkim will be the independent democratic country. And after they formed the democratic government, they asked India to annex it. So now Sikkim is the state of India, not the independent country. So Bhutan sees the Sikkim situation. That's why Bhutan takes the initiative to democratize their political regime. So, and people's will is strong. In this case, India cannot get the reason to annex state Bhutan. So Bhutan's way is, Bhutan live in the Pax Indiana. At the same time, in Bhutan try to be the independent country. So as in case of ASEAN, ASEAN is more powerful than Bhutan. But at the same time, if the US-China competition will be escalate, and ASEAN is located just between two. In this case, which choice is better? Balance the choice or choose the side? I think choosing side is better to survive. So in the future, if the US-China competition will escalate, in the future, each ASEAN country will face the situation. They need to choose the side, like Bhutan, not Nepal. That is my opinion. Thank you very much. I spent a long time to reply again. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I want to pass the floor to Professor Lilian for the last question, because we invited Professor Satoru Nagao for 1.5 hour meeting, and we spent the time. But please, Professor Lilian.
Thank you, Professor Alexandre. Dr. Satoru, o hisashiburi desu. I have just a very short question about what would be the influence of the question of amendment of the constitution, the Japanese constitution, to the behavior of Japan with the Quads? Is there any direct influence, or you think that it wouldn't be so meaningful for the development of the security policy of Japan in the next years? And at what stage is the discussion now? Because I think they've been discussing that for the last 10 years at least.
Okay, this is interesting question. In the past, amending the Article 9 of the Constitution, which prohibit to possess the formal army, navy, and air force, was meaningful. Now meaningless. Because last December, Japan decided to change the contents, perception, by publishing national security strategy, which possessed the counter-strike capability. And so now the amending the constitution is just related with the social status of the STF members, formal or not. But indeed, this kind of the amendment of the Article 9 was a little symbolic political effect. Because generally, law has changed, law has amended because situation has changed. So, but amendment of the constitution's discussion is change the law first, after that change the mood. So this is not a proper way. Fact has changed, after that law try to adjust it, that is proper way. And in the history, that has happened in the past. For example, despite this kind of sentences, Japan can possess a self-defense force. It looks like the Army, Navy, and Air Force. Name is self-defense force. In English, we cannot distinguish self-defense force and the Army, Navy, and Air Force. But only in Japanese, we can distinguish the differences. So that kind of discussion itself is indeed meaningless, not only in the now, but also in the past. But this is a symbol. That is symbol. Japan changed the constitution, changed Article 9. That's why Japan has changed. So now, since Japan published a new national security strategy, which opens a new method, which is the strike capability, when the enemy attack Japan, or when they prepare to attack Japan, anytime Japan can use this strike capability. So that's why, to self-defense purpose, we can use offensive operation. There is no limitation. The limitation exists because people believe this is a limitation, but legally there is no limitation. Legal discussion is changeable. Just now they say because of the constitution, because of the perception, this is the limit. But situation has changed. They can change the perception of the law, and we can do that. So that's why, indeed, amendment constitution is meaningless, just simple. We can do that, anything, under this legal system. Only the problem is not the constitution. Problem is mindset of Japanese. They live in the peacetime for 70 years, and they cannot understand what is war. From kindergarten to the university, there is no chance to learn security. My friend do not know what is aircraft carrier. He asked me when I said aircraft carrier. The friend said, "What is aircraft carrier?" He do not know the aircraft carrier because he haven't focusing on this issue in the past. He is a student in the university, but there is no chance to learn the security. Such kind of the people need to fight if China invade Taiwan. their mindset is looks like the people in the Mars or other planet. So that is a real problem. Constitution limits education. Because of the education, can Japanese fight? That is a problem. That is a very big problem, I think, because the most Japanese hasn't realized it. They are strange people. They are not the people in Ukraine. Look, it looks like people in Afghanistan. Afghanistan soldiers do not fight alone. US withdraw and Afghan government is dissolved. When the Russia invades Ukraine, Ukraine people fight back, strike back. That's why Ukraine survived. So when China invade Taiwan, China attack Japan. Japanese mindset is still in the peacetime. Can Japan fight? To go the situation like Afghanistan or to go like the situation in Ukraine? It depends on the mindset or perception of the Japanese people. That is the current most serious issue currently, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Professor Satoru Nagao, thank you very much for your kindness in accepting our invitation and for taking your time to talk with us and give such very good contribution with your reflection about Quad and other issues that you mentioned in your answers here today. And I think we have many more things to talk about, but as I said before, we invite you for 1 hour and a half meeting. I want to keep this time. And personally, I make myself available to repay your kindness. And I am sure also that I can speak on behalf of our group that everyone here is willing to do this retribution because your speak today was very amazing. And I want to say thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Such kind, okay, it is honor to receive such kind of the precious words. Thank you very much for giving a chance to speak. And there's a possibility my English is not so sophisticated. So if there is something that you cannot understand, I need to apologize. But thank you very much for listening for a long time.
Yeah. As we say here, the English today is any English because each country has their own accent English. That's it's perfect for us.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody here today, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.